As many of us will know, parking a car in London can be an infuriating experience. Around here, Westminster Council's controversial plan to introduce nighttime and weekend charges is just the latest thorn in motorists' sides. To stop things becoming a chaotic free-for-all, many parts of the capital introduced controlled parking zones. In fact, more than 100 such zones have been created or extended in the past 5 years. But with the prices of permits soaring, more and more residents feel they're being taken for a very expensive ride by their local councils. So we sent Joanne Good to investigate.
High insurance tariffs, the congestion charge, parking fees. Being a motorist in London is incredibly expensive, and for some Londoners, owning a car has just become even more costly. Over the last year, London car owners have seen the price of their parking permits rise well above the rate of inflation. In some cases, the cost has more than doubled.
It appears there's no free parking left, and drivers are just being taken for a ride.
The driving public are cash cows, and councils will go out of their way to cream as much as they can off the motorist.
Our parking zone initially was £20 a year. They've gone up, 500% or 1,000%.
Today, Janice is hosting a tea party for her friends and their children. But she's had to fork out for far more than the cost of the biscuits.
The visitors' permits have gone up from £1 per voucher to £4 per voucher, which is just outrageous. I don't feel able to ask each visitor for £4, so I end up sort of paying.
The change in price for visitors' permits has left Janice with a massive annual bill.
I use 200 vouchers every year, so that means it used to be £200 for the whole year, and now that's £800.
That's a staggering 300% increase. On top of this, Janice has also been hit with a price hike on her annual residence permit.
For our own car, we used to pay £40 for the year for our residence permit, and now that's gone up to £100. I think the price hike is absurd.
The residents of Barnet are not the only ones facing eye-watering increases. We sent a Freedom of Information request to every borough in the capital. On average, resident parking permits across London's boroughs have gone up by 26% in the last 3 years, and the cost of daily visitor permits by a whopping 42%.
Parking is becoming the new poll tax. We've seen in lots of boroughs the charges going up 20%, 100%, 150%. And it appears to be now more about money and not about parking.
6 years ago, residents in Stroud Green put up a fight when the council tried to enforce a car parking zone.
We carried out an extensive campaign, and in most of the roads, Haringey did not introduce the CPZ. But that, of course, is when our problems started.
The problem is that Stroud Green has become a mecca for motorists trying to avoid car parking zones elsewhere. It's called the domino effect.
When it comes to parking, there is a domino effect. You get one area close to a tube station or railway station that needs residential parking. That scheme is put in, and then the commuters actually move further out and they go to the next street, the next area.
What we've now got is the CPZ just 100 or so yards away from where we are at the moment. And what that's done is to make parking in our roads absolute hell.
5 years ago, the streets around Paul's house looked like this. Today, they've become a massive car park. But they are literally squashed in like sardines. Jane Forster lives locally and says finding a space to park is a daily nightmare.
I may be driving you around for hours, but I'm not going to get out until I've managed to park.
Well, let's go back into your road and see if we can find somewhere. But we're not going anywhere fast. There's a roadblock caused by nose-to-tail parked cars.
This is what we're having all the time, and we do have a bus that comes up the road as well. There is nowhere to park, nowhere to pass, because we've got cars both sides.
The community in Stroud Green is so fed up with situations like this that they've made something of a U-turn. What do you think is the answer to this horrendous situation?
We will have to become part of the CPZ. I can't see any other solution to it.
Are you worried about the cost and the fact that it may go up substantially each year?
I'd rather pay to be able to park than to have the situation we've got out here now.
My inclination is still to say I don't want a CPZ, but there is frankly no alternative. Haringey last year said we're increasing our parking charges, but we're simply taking them up to the London average. But of course, the average constantly rises.
It does appear in London that car owners are being attacked from all sides, whether they're residents, whether they're visitors, whether they're shoppers, whether they're theatre goers.
As space in London becomes increasingly tight, it's not just residents' permits that are soaring. Some local authorities are raking in the cash simply by extending parking time restrictions.
It's very difficult actually getting into London and being able to transport my instrument around. At the moment, we're quite lucky because as a musician I can normally get onto a metered bay from 6:30 onwards and there's no charge.
Vicky Tilson has been performing for years, but her career in the West End may sadly be coming to an end.
Westminster Council are looking to make parking paid up until midnight daily. On average, if I do a gig in central London, I might get 50 quid for it. If I'm paying £4.80 an hour to park, that's over half my gig fee just gone.
It's not just performers who will be affected by the change. Cleaners, waiters, even those working in the emergency services will also be hit by the new fees.
Of course there will be an impact, but ultimately what we've tried to do is limit the changes that we're making to a specific time of the day in a small area of Westminster, and if people want to park elsewhere, they'll still be able to park elsewhere for free within a couple of minutes of Oxford Street.
Car parking zones are clearly lucrative for local authorities. Our Freedom of Information request revealed that councils are earning millions from charging residents to simply park in front of their own front doors. More than £186 million has been raised from parking permits in London over the past 3 years. The borough that earned the most, Wandsworth, at £25 million. So what are councils spending all that money on?
The money that we get as income from parking permits and so on, we're legally obliged to use it, first of all, to cover the cost of a parking scheme, and then we're allowed to spend it on other transport things. We're not allowed to take it and spend it on social workers or other bits of the council.
Many boroughs are using parking charges for other means. It's not just to administer the parking scheme.
Campaigners in Barnet believe that's exactly what their local authority is doing. These residents are angry that Barnet Council has imposed almost a threefold increase on their parking permits.
Up to £40 a week.
They claim the local authority are using the extra money to unlawfully fund other services. They've taken their case to the High Court.
We're asking the court to consider whether the charges are lawful. What we do not accept is that they can charge money for parking and increase the parking charges in order to make up shortfalls in other budgets elsewhere.
Their initial request for a judicial review at the High Court has been rejected. The judge ruled that there is no evidence that Barnet Council has acted outside the letter or the spirit of statutory provisions. The next legal option for the residents is to make their case at an oral hearing. The Barnet residents' legal fight is a crucial landmark for all London drivers. If they win, then maybe more communities will unite and make a stand against high parking fees.
If you've got a parking story to share with us, either as a motorist or a resident, then get in touch. The address is yourlondon@bbc.co.uk. Now then, still to come on tonight's show.
What the regime